Hello, retro fans! It's summertime, and as usual, I'm a bit busy with other things in the summertime than just retro-related projects. And therefore, my channel activity is a little bit low, and even on Twitter, I'm down to a bare minimum of life signs, so to say, and actually not very active at all. But nevertheless, I got a couple of things on my desk I'm working on right now. It just takes a little bit longer than usual. And I decided to create at least some short episodes where I'm showing that I'm still alive, that I'm still interested in providing content for the channel, and actually, I'm trying to work on a couple of things which are waiting in my shelf for kind of completion, so to say. And actually, today I got something on my desk which is almost ready to ship. I'm just going through a couple of last tests, and then I just need to get in some screws, and then it's ready for shipment. And here it is, a standard 25469 board with a couple of modifications. You may remember that I have presented this a couple of weeks ago, perhaps months, as I started to kind of get this project done. And let's briefly talk about the modifications I have done on this C64 board. And well, perhaps as a kind of disclaimer, I have to apologize for this kind of fuzzy lighting, because I have changed the lighting of my workplace. I have added some I have installed some new lamps, some new lights, and I just learned quite recently that the two lights I have added are eating up a lot of power, more than I have expected, but by reading the spec I could have estimated that the power supply I'm using is indeed a bit weak, and so I started to shut down because of the heat and the overcurrent, and it was, well, kind of dark out of a sudden, and it started to blink, and so I had to switch off one light, and I'm trying to compensate this with my magnification lens with built-in LED, just to have some light on this side as well, and therefore it is a bit darkish inside the C64, but as I said, this is going to be fixed quite soon, and then hopefully we will have some nice lighting on this desk again. So, and then let's talk about this C64 a little bit. As you can see, I have added the Modulator Mod version 3, as I'm doing for most of the projects I'm working on. And this Modulator Mod is available for the newer boards, the 469 boards, as well as for the older boards, 407, 425, 466 boards. And the main purpose of this is to get rid of this kind of bar effect you have sometimes on the C64 screen, to provide a much clearer and sharper picture, to provide a real mini S video connector, as well as a stereo output for connecting the also installed on this C64 Mixsid, for example, and it is kind of connected to the VIC to two certain signals to compensate this already mentioned bar effect, and that's probably one of the most effective mods I am doing on 469 boards. I have done this on all of my C64s basically. Well, yeah. So and it's a very kind of cheap and easy mod to do if you have the equipment to get rid of the original modulator, which is a bit tricky, but anyway, it's almost doable for everybody. So the modulator mod is available at Form64 as well as on Restore Shop. Oh, forgot the name, damn it. But I will put it in the description section so that you can find it there. And this is very easy to build. I have got some build video on my channel as well. I will put a link in the description as well, so you can see that this is really quite basic stuff. And as already mentioned, I have installed a Mixsid the Mixsid to the C64 as well. And with the Mixsid we can have either two different type of SIDs or the new SID. It is recreating the voltage for the older SIDs out of 20 volt from the board here. So you can even run old SIDs on this new board, or you can install two identical SIDs and run it in full stereo mode, for example. But especially if you are into gaming or demos or something like this and you want to have the correct type of SID, then I recommend having two different, and then you can use the keyboard hotkeys, which I'm talking about in a second, to switch between the SIDs. So, and I have added some heat sinks to the SIDs because they are pretty hot, and to the big 2, it's a very hot thing as well. I have added a socket to the Super PLA, even if it is not very likely that this is going to fail, but if it is doing so, it is really kind of pain in the back to desolder it, because it has a different grid size, a different gap between the pins, and compared to the other IC, it is really a little bit hard to change, and therefore I put this onto a socket just in case. And I have added this SRAM 64 modification just to remove the original DRAM. So it is socket, and then you can just place the SRAM 64 on it. It has technically no advantage, so it is working the very same like the DRAM, and this is very important because staying compatible for different for the whole software spectrum provided on the C64. But you can easily change this against this sometimes not so reliable DRAM, and it's a very nice modification as well. And on the very left side we can see the SuperKernal64 with the Wi-Fi module attached to it. So the SuperKernel is able to provide different kernel ROMs for the C64, as well as single file games, as well as a file browser, as well as access to FTP server and so on. It's a very versatile thing, and I'm not sure whether this was born in the Form64 at Lemon64 or if it came out of nowhere, which I probably don't believe, but it was very good supported by the Form64. There's a very excessive amount of information available there, but well, kind of suddenly this project disappeared, and nobody really knows whether the guys are still working on this SuperKernel. But I think there's one guy, the Form64, which is able to who is able to provide a small amount of SuperKernels on request. But actually I'm not sure how this is working, whether he got still some contact to the developer team or if he got some kind of small stock at home. I don't know, but I will try to add the link to the description section, and then you will have a look by yourself. So what has been done as well? I have changed I think most of the capacitors on this board. I have changed the voltage regulators here as well, and I just stick to the original type of voltage regulators. I'm just going to replace it by new parts. And I'm not really a fan of switching to a different type of voltage regulator, because it is sometimes a little bit unpredictable how this is going to work with all the other modifications, and therefore I'm a bit conservative and stick to what's working for more than 30 years now. And last but not least, hidden by the keyboard actually, is the Keyman64 as well as the Overlay64. They are connected to each other. The overlay is providing additional information connected to the modulator replacement here. And then you have some kind of visual feedback. What are you doing with the Keyman64? We are going to cover a couple of the functions of this combo right now. And as you may have seen in the title screen as well, there is a built-in SD2IEC device, and this is actually hidden below the tape port. And if you remove the SD card, then you can still use the tape card, the tape port, I'm sorry. And the benefit of this is that it is not required to change anything on the case. As you can see, it's a pretty rare crystal case, and the last thing I would do to this type of case is drilling and filing some openings for SD cards or something like this, and therefore I decided to go this way. And actually it is pretty unlikely that you're going to use a SD card as well as a tape recorder at the very same time. But actually that's kind of a compromise we have to, well, deal with. Anyway, then we got some fancy blue LED, which is going to be attached to the case. And that's, well, basically all I have changed on the C64 so far. And now let's just jump into some of the functions of the C64. As you can see, there's a pretty nice kind of screensaver provided by the SuperKernel. So if you just leave the C64 somewhere in the corner and want to have some screen saving functions, then you're all set. And by pressing a key, you're back into the SuperKernel file browser. But let's perform a reset, and then we can see how it looks when we just start at the very beginning. I just hope it is going to work. Now probably we may have to power cycle the C64. So this is basically the start screen of the SuperKernel. You have different options. You can set this screen by default, or you can jump into a kind of standard predefined kernel. And as you can see, I have uploaded three different kernel files here, as well as some single file games. So you're really free to set those available slots, which should be, I think, 26 plus 10, 36 different slots, and then you can use them for whatever you want. And the handling is basically quite simple. You just select one slot you want to change, and then you jump into slot management, and then you can say load new data into the slot, size up to 62 kilobytes. So let's see whether we can perhaps load a demo into this slot, which I want to use later on for showing something else. Now my watch is telling me something, and basically I was going to jump in this directory, and here I want to load this file because it's quite slow, quite small, and so it won't take so long. And now we can rename this, or we can just store it there. So let's call this virus something. to sit demo, store, back to main, and here it is. Now by pressing return, we can set the stereo address for the demo, and now we can already listen to something that sounds pretty mono-ish to me. So let's change it to stereo addressing by pressing the left arrow key, and M is for mode for the Mixsid. And now we have some stereo sound already. And by pressing the left arrow key and 1, we can change the configuration of our additional addresses. And with left arrow key and 2, we can change the playback mode. So now we listen to just one SID. Now we have changed left and right. And now we listen to the other SID. And now we back into the standard configuration. And that's basically what we can do with the Mixsid and the Keyman as a combo. And as you have seen already, we have some visual feedback that we know what we are doing here right now. With left key and S, we can store the configuration, and then we are able to change the address of the built-in SD2IEC device, but for this we need to power cycle the C64. And with plus and minus, we could change disk images if we are using an auto swap or an LST file or some disk order list file of the SD2IEC device. So if you're running a game or something like this that's on multiple disks, you can create a so-called LSD file, load this, and then you can switch between the disk images with plus and minus. And I think that's all I have configured so far. The Keyman64 as well as the Overlay64 can be programmed by USB. So you can connect those two modules, whatever you want to call this, to your Linux, Windows, Mac machine, and configure all the hotkeys and the overlay texts and all that stuff by yourself. On this machine it's not as comfortable, as I have done this on a different project where I have installed a mini USB hub, and then you can access this USB connection from the outside, but due to space limitations I haven't done this for this machine. And let's jump back to this SuperKernel menu, and we can simply just select a different kernel ROM, and as you can see now we are in JiviDOS, and we have a directory view of this here as well. And basically I do not have the file browser on my SD2IEC device, so let's use the internal browser. And by jumping out of this directory, we should be able to perhaps mount a disk image. And let's be brave and go for something that's inside a DA1 image. And by jumping out of this, I still hope, yes, the disk image is still loaded, and I just forgot the hotkey for loading. And now we have a D81 image mounted and loaded by JiviDOS, which should perform some kind of speed improvement as well. And now the sound is just on one channel, so let's switch to parallel mode. And let's give this game a short test. Just want to see whether my joystick is working, the joystick port and all that stuff. Unlimited lives, no, we're not going to play this forever. Unlimited time, no. Start with all weapons, no. Save one at interludes, no. One hit to kill demons, no. Stop lilies, whatever, no. Unlimited balloons, no. Balloons start auto, no. The only thing that's missing is the drive sound, so... So, I have actually no idea how to play this one. Oh, you may have to jump. So I guess jump is up. Let's test it again. Yes. Too close. I may have picked a different game for testing. Game over. This was quite fast. Well, but actually we are not here to play games. We're just here to test things. And basically let's perform a reset. And well, basically I think that's all I have to say about the superkernel and the functions. As I said, there are a lot of options. You can update the firmware, you can set up your Wi-Fi, get your screensaver, what we have seen so far. Then we can enter the menu after we have power cycle C64, normal entry after menu start. And then you can select your default drive. So if you have multiple drives connected, then you can set this to different drive. Let's cancel this one. And then you have this so-called slot management. You can swap with different slots. You can load new data. You can rename this. You can delete the entry. And as shown already, you have a full file browser included as well, where you can browse through your different drives attached by just pressing 89012, I think. You can select different disk images, and it is working with the 81 images as well, so you're pretty flexible. I'm not sure about G64 images. So let's check whether this is working, but it is saying PRG, so I assume this is not working. But indeed this is a bit special as well. And I think there is no sound player, no SID player included. Let's check what happens if we're going to load a SID. No, it is interpreted as a program, and therefore it is not working. Well, anyway, as I said, that's basically all I want to show you about this project. I'm just going to screw in some screws and make this whole thing complete, and then it's basically ready for shipment. And then I will move on to the next thing that is waiting for getting ready. So, well, basically, thank you very much for watching as usual. I will try to remain active on this channel as well as on Twitter a little bit, and hopefully coming with fall and winter time you will see more content, and as soon as my setup is done, my lighting is working and everything else, then I will inform you about the most recent changes to my setup here as well. And that's basically what I have in mind so far for the next time. So, thanks for watching. See you for the next episode. Bye bye.